So with it currently being October and Halloween being right around the corner, you have a lot of people looking for a good horror series to watch. Personally, I feel like horror as a genre can be pretty hit or miss, but at the end of the day, it really just comes down to its execution. Now today I'm specifically going to focus on horror anime, mainly series that I think are worth checking out before Halloween. I'll also throw in some manga recommendations towards the end, cause why not? And hopefully I'll be able to at least put a few of y'all onto a new series once this video is over. But without further ado, let's get into these recommendations. So starting off with the first series I'm going to talk about today, while it's not necessarily a horror anime, I think it does an excellent job at nailing down the Halloween aesthetic, and the series that I'm talking about is Souleater. Now as some of you may know, I've already talked about Souleater on the channel. In that video I went into full detail about the series and why I personally think it deserves a reboot, but one of the things that I briefly mentioned in the video was the aesthetic. Everything from some of the character designs, the abilities, and even the main setting of the series itself, Death City, you can feel a really strong Halloween vibe from it. Now while I did mention Souleater isn't a horror series, that's not to say that there aren't horror aspects within it. There's a lot of visual horror throughout the series, especially with the Kishin, and even leads a slight bit to the psychological side at certain points. Overall though, I think Souleater is a pretty solid anime, albeit having a pretty messy ending, which I touch more on in my video about it, along with great animation, good choreography with the fights, and again a series that just permeates with the Halloween aesthetic. It's a perfect anime to watch before Halloween. Now another shonen series that I think does the Halloween aesthetic just as, if not even better than Souleater, is The Gray Man. It's a pretty underrated series in my opinion, and it was also released around that big 3 era with One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach. Anyways though, what makes The Gray Man stand out for me personally is the dark tone and its gothic aesthetic. Again, similar to Souleater, you can really see it showcased through the setting, the abilities, and the characters, especially with the antagonist in the series. Again, also like Souleater, the series has a lot of horror aspects within it, especially when it pertains to the monster designs within the show, some of which even bordering on the uncanny valley. All of this accompanied with a really good OST, and you've basically got yourself a great series to watch around Halloween. Aside from all that though, I think overall The Gray Man's a really great shonen series as a whole. While I think the anime is good, I think the manga is probably the best way to experience the series. It has some really great illustrations and paneling, though due to the creator's health, the series is frequently on hiatus, though hopefully someday the series will get an ending that it deserves. Now, moving into actual horror anime, while not all good, heavy emphasis on that, you still have some gems within the genre. One of the first that comes to mind are both Hellsing anime. While I think Ultimate is the superior option when it comes to these two, I think that the original Hellsing anime is still pretty solid, even with it having to stray away from the manga in the last few episodes. Not to mention that OST just slaps. Honestly though, if you want to get the best experience with Hellsing, I think that Ultimate is the optimal option, mainly since it covers all the manga and has better pacing. One thing I really like about this series is just how well it blends its horror with its action, giving us some pretty brutal fights throughout the show, though it's not to the point where it's overly edgy and there's still a story being told. This, along with the great cast of characters, especially King Vamp Alucard, made Hellsing a really great watch for me personally, and overall just a great horror anime through and through. Continuing on with talking about visual horror, another important series to mention is Parasite. This show showcases some of the best body horror I've seen from any anime out there. It does really well at executing its concept, with it basically being about these alien parasites who take over the human brain and then use their bodies as hosts, which the designs of some of these parasites looking pretty grotesque, and this anime does not shy away from gore. Like, the first scene of this anime is literally a woman getting her head bitten clean off. Also, another thing about these parasites is just how well some of them disguise themselves as humans, which makes for some pretty intense and suspenseful scenes. The series also has some really well animated action and combines the fight scenes with the body horror. Overall, I think Parasite is an amazing horror series. You got really good body horror, great action scenes, and even some well-written romance along with it that I didn't even mention. When this show has an absolute banger opening. Now, out of all genres of horror, my favorite's probably gotta be psychological. It's more effective for me personally than compared to something like a jump scare, and it does really well at establishing an unsettling vibe. One of my personal favorite psychological horror anime is Higurashi When They Cry. Now, in a similar case of Souleater, I actually made a video on this anime a year ago, though unfortunately it did get sniped down by copyright. What I mentioned in that video as to why I like Higurashi so much is just how much the series throws you off, because at first glance, Higurashi seems like a wholesome slice of life anime. You could be watching one episode where everybody seems chill and nothing out of the ordinary is happening, and then in the next everybody's losing their minds and offing each other. But the way Higurashi goes about it is what's really interesting. The series is split into different parts, each of which start off pretty normal, but slowly with each passing episode things get more and more unsettling, in turn creating a whole lot of suspense until things hit the fan. Along with an OST that perfectly matches the show, it all makes for some amazing horror, and honestly I think Higurashi's a must watch. The next psychological horror anime I want to talk about is a show called Mononoke. Now, it's definitely not as popular popular as everything else I mentioned in this video, so a lot of y'all probably don't even know about it. But let me put y'all on game real quick. Mononoke features our main character named Medicine Seller going around different parts of feudal Japan in order to defeat these spirits called Mononoke. These spirits basically take over negative human emotions and create their own forms. Though in order for them to reveal themselves, Medicine Seller must learn the shape, the truth behind, and the reasoning of the spirit. And once all of that's figured out, the Mononoke can finally be slain. Also, Medicine Seller undergoes this really cool transformation each time he does it. Mononoke is really cool because it's another one of those anime where you know you're watching an anime, but it doesn't feel like you're watching one. It sounds weird, but let me elaborate. Everything from the tone, the way the story is set up with it being split up into different parts, and especially the art style, which has this really cool construction paper overlay on it, and it's accompanied with some really great animation. It's a very experimental anime and it's completely different than any other show I mentioned so far. Even the way it goes about its psychological horror aspects is different. As opposed to a series like Higurashi where it tries to make you unsettled all the way through, Mononoke focuses more on messing with the viewer's minds and the emotions of the characters, which I think the show does amazingly. Also, none of the separate parts of the show are connected and each one features different characters. My two personal favorite parts are the second one with the ship and the fourth one where the Medicine Seller visits a mansion that's been taken over by Mononoke. Definitely would recommend at least watching those two, but overall I think the whole series is very much worth watching and is definitely one of anime's hidden gems. So I was about to close off the psychological horror section, but then I realized I almost forgot to mention Perfect Blue, which is crazy because I feel like you really can't talk about anime horror without bringing it up. Unlike everything I mentioned so far, Perfect Blue is a movie, and it packs so much just within 1 hour and 20 minutes. It does an excellent job at setting an unsettling tone and building up a bunch of suspense, like the iconic elevator scene for example. This movie's honestly a must watch, not only for anime fans, but for people who like horror in general. Now before I end this video, I did mention I wanted to throw some manga recommendations in here. When it comes to executing horror, I think that manga does it better than anime, especially when it comes down to its visuals. Starting off, of course, I have to mention Junji Ito's works. He has a huge variety when it comes to his stories, and some amazing illustrations to go with it. Recently, Uzumaki, one of his more popular series, just got an anime adaptation, and I actually was going to mention it in this video, seeing how good the first episode was, but seeing how things are going with it right now, I'm kind of glad I didn't. Yo, this might have like just taken Ninja Kamui's spot as most disappointing anime of the year. I also do want to mention the manga Blam. It's a cyberpunk horror series. It's a manga with not much dialogue, though this is intentional since the artwork and panels speak for themselves, and it does a really great job at conveying its story that way. Now, I know the time of me uploading this video is pretty late into the month, so I tried to recommend somewhat short series, aside from like Souleater, which is 51 episodes, and Degreymon, which is over 100. Though I know there's probably someone out there willing to finish one of those before the end of the month. Anyways though, I'm gonna end the video right here. Hope y'all enjoy, like the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll catch y'all in the next video.
La verdad.